Could your memory be good enough to recite a shuffled deck of 52 playing cards in perfect order? How about like four of them? So you might be surprised just how powerful your memory is when using the correct techniques. And in today's episode, we're going to teach you those techniques and exploit those techniques. This is Nick Newman with the Conscienticon, where we share practical, spiritual, occult wisdom. And today's episode is sponsored by Abdullah Yasser. Abdullah, I deeply appreciate your patronage, and so does everybody else here. So Abdullah wanted to learn about memory and how to improve memory. So I figured the best way to learn would be to learn from Dominic O'Brien, which is the 8 times world memory champion. So please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you stay to the very end of this video, me and the patrons have a gift for you that's absolutely free. Of course, they have paid for the platform that you'll be using to receive this gift. And if you're new here, or if you've been a returning subscriber, you already know what I'm talking about. If you're new here, I highly recommend checking it out because it's going to flip your world upside down. Okay, so stay to the end and I'll explain to you how you get that for free. No information, no login, no email, bullshit. It's free. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, so 8 times world memory champion Dominic O'Brien wanted to know how a magician could memorize an entire deck of playing cards after seeing one on television. Now, after a few weeks of practice, he thought he got pretty good at memorizing a deck of playing cards, at least half the deck. And from that point on, he thought he could actually break the record. And he went on to break this record not once, but 8 times. Okay, so absolutely savage. And Dominic goes on to explain that in school he wasn't particularly gifted in any way, that he struggled, and that he had issues focusing, which sounds like a lot of people I communicate with. And what's amazing here is that an overactive imagination is very useful for using these memory techniques. Okay, so how did Dominic pull off these feats of memory? So Dominic uses what's called the Loci technique. I'm not sure if it's called Loki or Loci, but I'm going to call it Loci because Loci sounds pretty freaking savage. Okay, Loci technique. The Loci technique dates back to ancient Rome and Greece. Okay, this technique is also called the Roman room, the Loci method, the journey system, and it is based off of using a journey system of location, association, and imagination. Okay, so location, association, and imagination. So what the technique is trying to do is use as many different components of your brain as possible, because the more neurons that fire together, the more likely that they are to wire
Spend
together.
your whole lives making little boxes, little memories. Oh, you think they make you so rich. You should see mine, kiddo. Oh, my mind's a cathedral.
Okay, so we've heard that before. Neurons that fire together wire together. So the idea is the more components, subcomponents of your brain that you're using, the more likely you are to remember information. You're able to put information in a deeper context. Okay, so the method of Loci is a mnemonic memory strategy to help people remember new information in sequential order. The technique involves imagining yourself placing new information around a room and then visualizing going back and picking it up in the order you put it down. How do we exploit this technique? The first way you can exploit this technique is by remembering names. Now, when I got to my new job, I had a lot of people that I had to remember their name, right? And I was working with a bunch of boys, and for the sake of this video, for learning purposes only, I will use real names, okay? But just the first names. But the first thing I had to do is try to remember all of these guys' names. And I was able to successfully remember them because to me, they were kind of a little bit bro-y. And so and all of their names reminded me of characters from Mortal Kombat. So the one guy's name is Braden. One guy's name at the time was Gage, which, I mean, already my brain was firing Mortal Kombat. And then Jacob was the third guy. And I wanted to remember every single one of them. And so I memorized their names as characters from a Mortal Kombat roster. Because if you played Mortal Kombat, you know there is a Raiden.
Raiden wins.
There is a, what is it, Luke Cage or Gage? So there's Gage there. And then Jacob, there's a character named Jax, which is kind of close to Jake. So I memorized their names this way. And I memorized them as, or ran fantasies of them as individual characters fighting each other. And that is a very specific example, kind of a goofy example of how you use this technique. We are able to store some crazy fantasies for a while. And this is because the use of your active imagination requires so many different components to be firing at once that I don't think the system knows the difference between a memory and memory of a fantasy, which is very interesting. So the first thing you can do is remember names by basically associating those names with other names that you have heard elsewhere, or characters elsewhere, or items, and then putting those characters in a fantasy scenario in your mind. Okay. The second way you can exploit this technique is through language learning. So, for example, when I was learning some Japanese, Ringo means apple, right? And for some reason, I would never forget apple, because my teacher would tell me Ringo Starr to remember the apple. And it was so strange. I just imagined Ringo Starr, the musician, holding an apple, and I never forgot it. And so you can use this when learning new languages, because what you're trying to do is create associations with neural connections within your mind that have already existed before this. So you latch it on. It's way easier for your mind to latch on information and hold that information when it's anchored in something contextual. And it doesn't even have to make a lot of sense. It's just got to elicit some sort of emotion within you. It's got to be entertaining in some way. It's got to be something kind of flashy or not subtle, something that you're definitely going to remember, and it might even make you cringe if you say it out loud. And so, because this channel is about Hermeticism and Hermetic philosophy, or occult philosophy, I wanted to memorize the 7 Hermetic principles without text. And the way I did that was by running a scenario or a little story with the text. And so one of the most annoying, I guess, texts would be the law of polarity, which I've recited a few times on this channel. And that is, everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, yet different in degree. Extremes meet, all truths are but half-truths, all paradoxes may be reconciled. So how do I recite something complicated like that? And bear with me, okay? Because the first thing I did was go to the most absurd idea I had, which is about Yu-Gi-Oh! And when I was a boy, I really enjoyed playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The trading card game, and watching the cartoon series, even though Yu-Gi is a hell of a cheater.
But his target isn't your sea monsters. I'm having him attack a card I put on the field myself. The moon!
When I thought the first phrase is everything is dual, I immediately thought of dual monsters and the world of dual monsters, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, and all they do is duel in that world. It's a world ran by a children's card game.
Card games on motorcycles!
Card games on motorcycles!
And so I imagine Yugi and Kaiba as opposites. So everything is dual. Everything has its pair of opposites. So you have your protagonist and your antagonist. Everything has its pair of poles, which I imagine them dueling on the North Pole. So I imagine a huge dueling stadium in the middle of Antarctica or whatever. Okay, South Pole, whatever. And then from there, I just keep adding levels to the story so we remember it until I get to the very end, which is all truths are but half truths, all paradoxes may be reconciled, which I think the law should have been shortened to that, because it's the most elegant way of saying that nothing exists without context, which is the key to holding memory. Context is is how you anchor memory. Things have to make sense. They have to be usable. And if they're not usable, they've got to be attached to something that elicits deep emotion within you, or even superficial emotion. You have to feel something, or it's got to be contextual. And if it isn't contextual, you will not remember it. And this is why people struggle so deeply with memory. It is because they are taught things without context. They are taught things without knowing what the hell the uses are for the knowledge. And then they don't listen. They imagine things, and then they daydream, and they store things in their memory which are more contextual to their daily lives, such as, playing video games or whatever media they're consuming, or things that are going on within their family or their personal hobbies. Okay, that's where their memory is going to be devoted, because even if it's nonsense, it's contextual nonsense. So you have to make things contextual. So this is Nick Newman with the Conscient Con. If you got this far, please comment, like, and subscribe. It's absolutely free. Just hit the like button to support us. Now, if you really, really like this content, please become a patron. And what's dope about being a patron is you will get a video posted on the Conscient Con under your name, just as Abdullah here has done, and it will be immortalized. Whatever question you have or teaching you want to share will be immortalized on the Conscient Con, and that is only for the first 100 $3 tier patrons, okay? And as promised, my friends and I have been working on a website, and this website has something called an Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious test. Now, this test was developed with ideas from Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, and several other individuals. And what it is a personality test that anchors you to a fictional character archetype, and these fictional character archetypes have been seen repeated throughout all stories of all human cultures. And so we have 12 different archetypes that are primary archetypes, and the idea is that human beings are archetypical, and those archetypes form our personalities, and those archetypes are made up of the very unique ways that every individual faces uncertainty, because the thing about uncertainty is there's no correct way to face it. And so humanity has come up with around 12 different ways to handle uncertainty. So go check the link below, and that is on the website www.conscientacon.com. Hit the link and then take the archetype test. It is absolutely free. We don't ask you for any information whatsoever. And that is thanks to our patrons, which help fund that website. And I thank you all so very deeply. So tell us in the comments below what archetype you get so we can discuss it in future videos. This is Nick Newman, and I thank you guys. Take care.